The devil very meticulously plots against good Christians. And that's a fact because he, being the devil, hates when others go to heaven because we receive as a gift what he wanted to conquer by force without God's help. And that makes him jealous and frustrated. So he wants our ruin at all costs. And since he is a pure spirit and has an angelic intelligence, he can plan out our ruin like an excellent chess master. And he sets up traps for us all over the place. Today, we will see the heroic way in which St. John Vianney escaped all these traps. He managed it because he never did these 3 things that I'm going to reveal to you. These 3 things that he avoided at all costs made him almost invisible to every single plot of the devil. And the good news is that in these 3 things, you can imitate him from the comfort of your home. And I emphasize the word comfort because after knowing the story of St. John Vianney, anything is comfort compared to what he went through. But he did the hard work and gave us 3 tried and tested principles of what to avoid. Well, and I could say they're almost like hacks to achieve our spiritual objective, whatever they may be, especially avoiding hell and getting to heaven. From his infancy, it would seem that the devil was doing everything to keep St. John from becoming a priest. And most of you already know that St. John Vianney wasn't a very bright student, to put it politely. But he had no illusions about his capacity. He was the 4th son of a peasant family in the south of France. Although peasants, their family had a very noble attitude. They would help the poor and even sacrifice their food and belongings to help the needy. The first words that he uttered were Jesus and Mary. And the first gesture that he learned was the sign of the cross. By the age of 4 or 5, he would already spend time alone as he spoke to his guardian angel. He was not really a strong worker in the field, but he worked more than many strong men out of love for the Blessed Virgin Mary. One time he received as a gift a little statue of our Blessed Mother. And before he started plowing the fields, he would kiss it and then throw it as far as he could in the direction of the plowing, knowing that he would find the statue at the end of his plowing, and that would give him strength to work. Then, when he reached the statue, he would kiss it again and throw it to his next objective. Knowing that the Blessed Virgin was at the end of his path as a reward was something that always gave him the enthusiasm to work. He would give up anything to have Mary. Then came the French Revolution that would kill tens of thousands of good Catholics and many priests. During the revolution, he gathered little children and gave them sermons about the faith because of the lack of priests. But it was during this time that he came across some truly heroic priests who considered souls much more important than the threats of the revolution, who killed many priests and holy men. It was probably these heroes of the faith that gave him the desire to become a priest. So, the French Revolution actually worked against its objective, at least as far as John was concerned. This trap of the devil didn't harm him. But his father wasn't keen on his son being a priest and consequently having to spend all that money for his studies. His father was actually a good Catholic, but somehow he was used by the devil to try to deviate St. John Vianney's path to the priesthood. When he was 18 years old, the churches opened again, and Father Beatty, a very zealous missionary, admitted him to his new seminary with his father's half-grudging approval. But soon after he began studying, Napoleon called all men to war. Now priests and seminarians could be exempt from the army without any cost. But the recruiting authorities wouldn't consider this late student as a seminarian. He was lodged in a farmer's family and was having lessons at the village presbytery. Plus, his name wasn't on the official list submitted by the diocesan authorities. Father Bailey made a last-minute appeal for John Vianney, but unfortunately it came too late. There was nothing more that they could do. They had to follow the rule. Jean-Marie would soon be 24, but he hadn't even reached the level of a 15-year-old student. Surely, this was the end of his hopes of becoming a priest. At least, he could have thought so. But a ray of hope appeared on the horizon. The law said he could be exempt if he found a substitute. So, he took up courage and pleaded to his already upset father, rather cheekily, to find a substitute for him. His father, half-heartedly, finally managed to practically pay someone to substitute his son. What a relief. But 3 days later, the young man changed his mind, and St. John Vianney was back to square one. There was no way out. The law was the law. It was the most difficult situation for him in the barracks. The blasphemous companions and the immoral ambience took a toll on him. He had to make double or triple the effort to pray, and even took on sacrifices to be able to resist his companions. All of this took a toll on his feeble body, and he was soon very sick with a strange fever. So he went to a hospital and spent some time there. But they took such good care of him that he unfortunately was fit to get back to the army. But guess what happened? He was so overwhelmed by the whole army thing that he went into a church to pray and got so carried away in prayer that he lost track of time. And by the time he got to the office to present himself for the mission, the office was already closed. So he waited until the next day. And the next day, the officer called him a deserter because the troops had already left. But St. John Vianney was able to explain himself, and they finally believed him, but sent him out alone on foot with a heavy backpack to catch up with the rear guard of the army. Now, can you imagine the frail St. John recovering from a sickness, alone on foot with a heavy sack on his back? He was devastated, but he didn't give up. He took out his rosary and prayed it while he stopped to rest for a bit. And while he was praying, a stranger came up to him and asked him who he was, etc., and finally asked a saint to follow him. Now, St. John Vianney was in need of shelter for the night and had no hope of catching up with the rest of the army before sunset. So he followed this man who happened to be a deserter. And without realizing it, St. John Vianney ended up deserting the army. When he realized the situation, it was already too late. If the army found him, he would be shot. Another trap of the devil. One day, some guards came looking for deserters, and St. John Vianney was told to hide in a fermenting haystack, in which he had to choose between poisonous fumes or suffocation. He even got poked by one of the lances, but not make a sound. Finally, the guards gave up. What a relief. Now he spent about a year hiding, where he even used another name. But he still didn't give up. As soon as he could, he called for a seminary book so he could catch up with his studies while working as a farmhand for his kind hosts. When the situation in France calmed down, they finally managed to substitute him with his younger brother, who was now old enough to fight in the army. But his family went through great trials and his mother ended up passing away. Now, how did he respond to this incident? He consecrated himself to Mary as her slave of love. Yes, even St. John Marie Vianney was a slave of the Blessed Mother. Do you know what this is? I'll explain it to you in a moment. Anyway, he resumed his seminary studies, but he could never learn Latin. and the seminary sent him home. He almost became a lay religious brother, but thanks to his parish priest, was convinced that he should be a priest and helped him out and taught him in secret. But he still could not pass the test in Latin, and the authorities were not willing to budge. He could not be a priest. Was this another trap of the devil? Anyway, one day, things in France shook up and Napoleon renounced his throne. Napoleon's mother and uncle, who was a cardinal that governed the diocese, had to take refuge in Rome. The bishop who substituted this cardinal, Bishop Corbon, had pity on St. John Vianney and asked his superiors if the young man had devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary and if he prayed the rosary. That was all that the bishop needed to know. The grace of God would do the rest. So, St. John Vianney was finally ordained, and because of his lack of formation, was sent to Ars after a year of priesthood, since Ars was so bad that this illiterate priest could not make it any worse. Little did they know that Ars would become one of the most visited towns in the whole world, if not the most visited town in those times. When he reached Ars, he drew up his famous things to avoid. Number 1, he should never permit himself to think that he can accomplish nothing in his parish, no matter how long a time his efforts may have appeared unfruitful. So, in other words, never let failure get you down. 2, he should never consider that he has done enough, no matter how much he may have accomplished. Which, in simple terms, is never let the satisfaction of success get to you and make you relax. If we look closely with our trusted magnifying glass, we will see that he always followed these 2 principles in all aspects of his life, and not just in his parish. Remember I told you of the devil's plot against us? All attacks and plots of the devil have one objective. The devil wants us to give up, and he starts by making us lessen our effort. The devil is plotting our ruin in all of the obstacles, and even in our successes. So, if we avoid these 2 things, the devil's plans and plots will be frustrated. But there's one never missing. And thanks to our trusted magnifying glass, we can deduce it from St. John Vianney's life. So, number 3, never be satisfied with your devotion to Mary. There is never enough of Mary. That is why, instead of lamenting his saintly mother's death, he consecrated himself to Mary. Remember the time he threw the statue as far as he could to catch up to it? He would give up everything as long as he could arrive at Mary. That is why he was ordained a priest, in spite of all the obstacles that the devil put in his path. It was because of his great devotion to Mary. With this 3rd point, the 2 other points are easy. That is why I'm going to invite you to consecrate yourself to our Blessed Mother, just as St. John Vianney did. And you can do it with us. It is easy, it's simple, it's free, and you can do it from the comfort of your home because it's online. I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, is there another secret that can guarantee your salvation no matter what? So good that it's almost like a hack to get to heaven? Well, I already spoke about that in another video, where St. John reveals the secret that saved this man who committed suicide. Yes, you heard me correctly. St. John Vianney's gift of distant vision saw the one thing that saved the man who jumped off a bridge from going to hell. Oops, I already gave away too much. So, see you in the next video. God bless and Salve Maria.